Hello everyone, welcome back to another devlog. In this devlog, we'll be working on the inventory and the crafting mechanics. To start off with, I started writing some code for the inventory. I already have the toolbar code completed, so it's just a matter of copying and pasting, and just need some things to make the inventory work. Similar to the toolbar, the inventory populates by checking the player's inventory and adding UI elements from there. I also added a stacking feature to the inventory management system, which is in the player script. Items now have an amount property, and then when you're adding the item to the player and the player already has the item, the amount property just gets added on. Here you can see the stacking mechanic work as intended. Next up is on to making the inventory work. Whenever a player hits the tab key, the player will lock in place, the camera will lock, and the inventory will pop up. From there, players can edit the inventory, change the toolbar, or craft items. Next up is the crafting mechanic. I added onto the inventory and made a new crafting UI. It will be similar to the item UI, except it will have 3 separate slots for items, one being the result of the craft, the rest being ingredients for the craft along with how much ingredients are needed. Then it's on to messing around with the layout until I find one that looks just right. I have settled on a design that's center-based and flexible, meaning you'll be handling a large amount of recipes. However, I couldn't find a way to make the scroll bar work, so for the sake of time, I've skipped over that part and plan to add to that later on. Then it's on to making the crafting UI work. The problem that I had is that the crafting UI didn't show up whenever the inventory was open like it was supposed to. I found out that the position of the crafting UI was incorrect, so I fixed that and got it to work. Then I'm going to do crafting recipe script that's similar to the item script, but it has multiple item slots to accommodate the recipe. How I wanted the crafting UI to work is that whenever a recipe is available, meaning that the amount of ingredients to craft the recipe is in the player's inventory, the recipe will show up in the UI. To make this work, I just added a loop whenever the inventory updates. So whenever a new item is added to the inventory, it runs a function that checks whether each recipe is craftable, and if it is, it will show up on the UI. I'm currently storing all the recipes inside the asset folder, and I do this for 2 reasons. One, I don't want to add the recipe one by one manually whenever I make a new one. And 2, I want it so that whenever I make a new batch, I won't have to move everything over, and that will cause a lot of issues later on the load. So I just kept it in the asset folder. However, that made things a bit more challenging since accessing the asset folder is a little bit more complicated than just accessing the workspace. But in the end, I got it to work after many trials, and now it finds all the recipes in the recipe folder, and it adds them accordingly to the UI depending on if it can be crafted or not. And finally, while this UI won't work, meaning that it won't actually craft the item, I still wrote the function to craft the item for future updates. With all that being finished, the inventory and the crafting UI is ready. Now all that's needed to do is add the functionality. Thank you guys for watching to the end. Make sure you like and comment, and stay tuned for later episodes.